Your Excellency, I thought it was interesting because when His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid made that announcement yesterday, you were as an organization, as a ministry, recognized for great work. But I think it'd be remiss if I didn't say you had a long journey to get up to that level. So what's it like to be in a ministry that was struggling because the portfolio grew, number one, right? I think you were saying you have across 125 different programs in the country. How do you push to rise up, and what sort of focus and deployment did it require?
Thanks, John. First of all, it's a pleasure to be over here and to share some of our good practices that we have in the Ministry of Energy and Infrastructure. As you know, John, the ministry is a huge organization. We cover many sectors. And like you said, we have around 125 services that we provide to the public. We focus on 4 major aspects in terms of what we were able to deliver. First comes leadership. And when I say leadership, there has to be commitment right at the top. When the Zero Bureaucracy initiative was launched, we formed a higher committee that was chaired by myself, and we had 7 members which were assistant undersecretaries to give the weight to all the teams that were working on all the services that we have. We also linked the leadership with the customer. We had put certain KPIs in terms of complaints that come through from customers. If the time taken to resolve these complaints were not met, the matter would be escalated directly to myself, and I would get a notification, and I would actually reach out to the customer to understand the problem. This is one. Second, we took a customer and employee-centric approach. We engaged around 200 of our employees, motivated them, encouraged them to come up with ideas. Around 93% of the ideas were implemented that came from the employees. And we had held a number of gatherings where we appreciated the employees that were coming up with creative ideas. This encouraged others to also contribute. We also introduced an award by the minister to the best ideas that were proposed by the employees. We engaged with 702 customers, and basically to understand their needs, what their challenges were. We focused in on a few key customers that utilize our services significantly. These customers, to be very frank, and as Her Excellency Huda mentioned, were the reason the rating, the customer satisfaction rating for the ministry was as low as 75%. When we engaged with them, they became our ambassadors, and they were promoting our services, how seamless and how easy they are. Now, today, we are at around 95% satisfaction. Number 3 was we focused on looking into creative working methodologies and mechanisms. We went into remote operations for our employees and flexible hours. So instead of having employees working 8 hours in our service centers, we had them work at home and work around the clock with whatever time suits them. So some of them were working late hours, some of them were doing morning hours. What happened? Productivity increased, and the time to process these requests reduced. Finally, I think very key to this was data integration. We identified around 37 entities, local and federal, that we integrated with, and having that data available with us cut the duration of us providing the services significantly.
Okay. I want to use an example, so give it some thought, of the housing sector, but I'll circle back. But you were saying that that's part of infrastructure, and you had to address it because it affects everybody's lives. So I'll come back to you on that. It's interesting, Mohammed bin Talila, because you're the Chief of Government Services, so really the buck stops at your desk, right? Because this is at the heart of a priority for the government and the UAE now. How do you identify inefficiencies, and then very importantly, get the mindset, as Sharif was saying here, of your team? And do you get a coalition of the willing within government that can help different elements of government to succeed at this process? Because, I was saying this genuinely, that this is a very efficient place. So I thought it was really interesting that this journey is now restarting, if you will, because it's made a lot of progress. How do you take it to the next level?
John, as Sharif said, there was a program that was designed to transfer the knowledge to different government entities, employees around the federal government. And the purpose of that is to guide every employee to focus on the right process or right, I would say, bureaucracy to zero, where that has the highest impact, that impacts people's life. And one of the things that I also told His Excellency, identify the most complaining customer and make that
You got to make sure it's an accurate one, though, because some people just like to complain.
and make that customer your consultant.
Oh, right.
Because
Interesting.
that customer can give you feedback more than any other consultant. And this is what they actually did, and that's what helped them, move forward. And whenever we build anything today as a government, we're not competing with governments. We're not competing with ourselves. We're competing with the last digital experience that our customers have gone through. And I ask my team, and I ask everyone, have you ever started the Amazon app and it didn't work? Okay, and they say no. Then why do we have that problem in government? That's a bureaucracy, okay? And we should not only look at it just as a process or procedures, but it's the overall experience that the customer goes through when dealing with the government. And
that's a great point you bring up. Can I follow up? Because there's a conditionality of the consumer, right? If they had a good experience on an Amazon or their bank is responsive, if I'm working with utility and it's not responsive, then I've got a problem. So is the private sector influencing the work that the government's doing because of that user experience in the best of class in the private sector? It's an excellent point you're making.
Absolutely, absolutely. So after all, we live in one world, okay? And whatever people experience anywhere else, they will look at us and be like, okay, why is the experience here different,
right,
as a government, okay? And there is a very huge influence, and we learn from the private sector as we go forward. The private sector has, a very clear, motive to satisfy their customers. They want to make more money.
Yes.
Okay? We want to build trust, and that's why we want to make our customers' experience every day better than the day before.
Good. Very interesting. Mark, it's great to have you, and thanks for joining this session, because you were going to be on the following session. I would have missed your insights, but you share both the private sector and the public sector experience in Slovenia. You're working with an AI company now. You're a senior fellow at the Atlantic Council in this space of, innovation. How do you strike the right balance? Because you did this in Slovenia and you moved the country up a big margin in 1 year. And then does it sustain itself once you get that initial jump or not, or you have to stay on the watch? Please.
Thanks, John. I think this is a great question.
Bring that mic a little bit closer if you can. Thanks.
So let me refer to what has just been said. I think it's all about coalition building. So when I built the Ministry for Digital Transformation in my home country from scratch, I really tried to replicate a startup. I brought in the best people from the private sector. I also brought in a lot of top talent from the other parts of the public sector. But when I had the first meetings with other ministries about implementing our very ambitious action plan, I must admit, those were some of the most depressing meetings I've had in life. In the end, I realized that it's not about technology. It's about the change of culture. It's about changing the tyranny of status quo to a can-do and solution-focused approach. And it took a lot of depressing meetings to get everyone on board, to make everyone realize that what we're doing with digital transformation is a win-win-win for everyone. And once we achieved that point, and again, it was a painful exercise, we were able to deliver real change and move Slovenia from number 15 in Europe to number 11 in 1 year's time, meaning ahead of countries like Germany and France. So it really takes a cultural shift, and you just cannot do it without top talent from the private sector.
Good. Is it pushback? Can you follow up quickly? So you almost have like a coalition of the willing, but what do you do with those who are trying to hold back that process? And I think this is what President Trump's after. I mean, it's a fairly radical approach that he's taking because he's kind of breaking all the dishes in the China box here before he moves. But what do you do with people who are pushing back and that don't want to modernize? And I'd love to hear from our others on this. Go ahead.
So, John, this is a great question. As you know, we, the Europeans, are not fans of the shock therapy.
Yeah.
We prefer to bring everyone on board, build consensus, and I think we're quite good at it as well. So my approach was to get everyone on board. Now, you can never get everyone happy, that's for sure, but as long as you can get the majority happy, the majority of public servants and public institutions, you'll make terrific progress.
Good. I want to follow up and just share a tale, because I've chaired sessions with you on energy policy. So we talk about OPEC Plus, and we talk about the transition and bringing in clean energy. I had no idea you wear another hat on trying to clean up efficiency of the customer-facing work. So I got to commend you. You've got a very big portfolio.
Yes.
But I'm going to slice this up a little bit. What did you do in housing? Because you said, if there's a customer-facing entity, it's how do you deal with housing and making that experience to buy land, to build and get your permits, you deal with the tax structure and the rest. What did you do?
See, the housing file, John, is a very, very important file for us because it touches the UAE National. And when we merged the 4 entities into the current ministry that we have 5 years back, there was quite a lot of complaints. Historically, it was one of the most complained services that we had. Basically, the complaints were that there were many entities that the UAE National has to follow up with. A lot of documentation needs to be submitted, many processes needs to be followed, and basically to get approvals, it was taking too much of a time. So what we did as a ministry is we went through the entire journey for the customer, redesigned it completely, introduced a few proactive services, and then also upgraded our digital channels to customize it based on our customer needs. The results were phenomenal, basically. One key aspect we had to do was we had to integrate with a lot of other entities, up to 24 federal and local entities, because data was critical to actually improve in the services that we provide. The results, we reduced the time required to get approvals of services done 50%. 90% of documentation were reduced. 80% of the processes were reduced. So now the UAE National, instead of going to 11 entities, they only approach the ministry, 1 entity. Instead of submitting 10 documents, they only submit 1 document. Instead of following 14 processes, they follow only 3. And when we started off, we had only 1 proactive service. Today we have 12. So it was a major improvement, and we see that in the results. The customer satisfaction now is above 90 or 95%, and we are improving. This is just the beginning of the journey. This is, I heard this, His Excellency Mohammed say this yesterday, and I will repeat it. Excellence and perfection is a never-ending journey. Once you think you've reached there, then that's the beginning of your downfall.
Yeah, I've actually seen him in action. I don't think resting's kind of in his dictionary at all in terms of pushing the envelope, right, and testing new boundaries. I think COVID-19 was really interesting that way because a lot of governments kind of froze and panicked.
True.
The UAE leaned in pretty quickly to see how they can do this. I wanted to get your final thoughts because we're out of time, but on AI, and why it's important to deal with the bureaucracy that Sharif was talking about, because there's a new wave of technology that if you don't have the bureaucracy cleaned up, you could be overwhelmed and stagnated by AI. Mohammed, how do you approach it? And then Mark, you can finish with this.
Well, artificial intelligence will have a huge impact on the way we provide services in the government. And I believe that it's going to be very important for us to go through the next wave of improvements and killing bureaucracy. You know, when technology first came in, a lot of nations and governments believed that if you go digital, you solve bureaucracy. But that's not true. Digital and systems and technology does not solve bureaucracy. We need to design our environment and our systems and our policies and procedures around the technology to be able to serve people better. And this will happen with AI now. AI can do 100 times what technology today can do. And we can augment user effort, and we can simplify processes. especially with agentic AI, where all of the user effort could be augmented and get all of this flow done on behalf of the customer. I believe that AI will bring the era of conversational services with the government, where we're going to start seeing very soon that instead of having websites and mobile application, we're going to be communicating with the government through AI, using voice commands. I want to renew my driving license. I want to get a house. I want to renew my visa, and everything is done.
And
on the
I think
fly.
who to address this, Mohammed, that you can be anticipatory with AI as well, right? Mark, do you want to pick it up because you're in an AI company? I only have a minute because we're over time.
I think it's an enormous opportunity, and I would go beyond the chatbots. I would really focus on predictive AI, meaning AI that can harness tremendous amounts of data that every government has to help policymakers make better decisions, be it in healthcare or infrastructure or any other area. Let me give you an example from Slovenia. We built one of the strongest European supercomputers to be able to forecast flooding and other adverse weather effects so that we can adjust not just the contingency plans, but also the infrastructure accordingly. Singapore, for example, is using AI to optimize their traffic. They use AI to adjust traffic lights in real time, reducing congestion by 20%. So it's already here, but there's so much more to be
Good. So that's an interesting message. We shouldn't be alarmed by AI as long as it's used well. And if you've been doing all this work to reduce bureaucracy, then your system's better prepared to take the advantage of AI. Would you say that, Mark, or not?
Absolutely. Let's just go ahead. Let's not discuss whether it's a good thing or it's a bad thing. Let's just do it.
Okay. With some guardrails, I would think. That was the message coming out of Paris this week. But that's another 45-minute debate, which we don't have time. Great to see you. Yeah, thanks a lot for doing it. Mohammed, nice to meet you for the first time. Mark, it was a pleasure we were doing a preliminary call to share the back office and to plan for this session. And Mark and I were in the VIP room, but in a different cubicle. So we had a coffee afterwards. Give him a nice round of applause. We'll take a quick photo, and thanks a lot. Nice to meet you.
This thing.